Hello everyone. Today's case is yet another one of a missing young man from Canada, this time specifically from Quebec. And he's been missing for over a decade. So today's case is very important to spread the word on. 20-year-old Luke Joly-Durocher was from Témiscamingue, Quebec, a city located at the south end of Lac Témiscamingue on the upper Ottawa River. He was born to his father Rob, mother Monique, and had two sisters named Sarah and Priscilla. As a kid, Luke was given a guitar for Christmas, and over the years he practiced his skills. As he got older, he was a budding musician, even asking his sister Priscilla if she'd be his manager if his music took off. Luke was also described as a warm, friendly, and handsome young man with lots of friends. He loved hockey, his favorite team being the Florida Panthers, and his favorite band was Nirvana. In 2011, Luke had just moved into his new apartment with his cat Yoshi and had just started a new job. On Friday, March 4th of 2011, Luke went to visit some old friends 66 kilometers away in North Bay, Ontario. He went with his childhood friend Brent so that they could celebrate one of their friends moving to the city. And they were staying with them at 683 Sherbrooke Street, a 4-unit home that the friends had just started renting. However, it was not known to be in the best area of town. At some point earlier in the day, Luke would withdraw $20 from his bank account. And that night, him and his friends partied at the home. They had jello shots, they played beer pong, they drank. After 11 p.m., the group decided they were going to walk around 9 minutes to Main Street, specifically heading to Blur nightclub. Unfortunately, one of the friends would end up being denied into the bar due to being too intoxicated. However, the girls seemed to be allowed entry, so then the males in the group decided they were going to go somewhere else. Around 11:54 p.m., Luke and 3 of his male friends decided they were going to try their luck at another bar/restaurant across the street called Cecil's Brewhouse and Kitchen, located at the corner of Main and Wild Street. This time, when they got to the front door of the bar, Luke's male friends ended up going in ahead of him. However, Luke was the last one to try to enter and he got denied entry. However, unlike at Blur, Luke's friends decided to continue heading inside the bar and didn't leave with Luke. Within the same minute or so, Luke could be seen on surveillance footage exiting the restaurant without his friends, just like in the Riley Strain case. He's seen making a left out the bar door and then turns around and goes down the steps behind him because there's no exit from the porch on the left. This is the last time that Luke would be seen. According to his friend Brent, he tried to text Luke. However, Luke allegedly didn't answer, so they all just decided that Luke probably went to a different bar and they continued on partying. The next morning, Brent said that he planned on taking a bus back to Témiscamingue with Luke. However, when Brent woke up, he texted Luke, and again, Luke didn't answer. Over the night, Luke's family began to worry because he wasn't responding to anyone. And then after that, Luke was meant to come back because he was actually going to go to his family's home to celebrate his little sister's birthday. However, Luke would never show up and he would not answer anyone still, and that's when everyone began to worry. It was completely out of character for Luke not to show up for his sister's birthday and not to respond to anyone. After this, his mother Monique decided to travel to North Bay, and she ended up going to that home on Sherbrooke Street that Luke had stayed at. When she got to the home, she ended up finding multiple items of Luke's inside the residence, including his dark navy American Eagle jacket and a hoodie that were reportedly damp. Luke's dead cell phone would also be found inside the home. So Monique ended up taking Luke's cell phone home and charging it, only to find, once it turned on, that none of Luke's friends seemed to have either texted or called him to ask where he was. They didn't seem to be concerned about him, which was very strange. Monique would also discover that the day after Luke's disappearance, the couple that was living in the Sherbrooke Street apartment had left for a pre-planned road trip to Florida. It would later come out that allegedly the girlfriend ended up taking a flight home due to her boyfriend allegedly being violent towards her. Now, Monique finding all these items at the Sherbrooke home happened on March 7th. So after finding all these items and seeing that no one had any clue where Luke was, Monique would end up reporting Luke missing to police and provide them with the items that she'd found. Police, however, didn't seem very interested in Luke's cell phone, but ended up taking his clothing items. Initially, police didn't really seem concerned, which we see quite often in these cases. Police would end up telling family that they thought Luke probably just met a girl somewhere while he was partying and that he'd been at her place the last few days, not contacting anyone and just continuing to party, which according to the family would have been completely out of character for Luke. When Luke's phone records were looked at, it would show that his last text was to his father at 8:51 p.m. on March 4th, 2011. Family began getting very frustrated with the police since they truly didn't seem like they really wanted to investigate. So the family ended up going to the media hoping that they could try to spread the word on Luke's disappearance and get answers. On March 10th, Luke's mother Monique and his sister Priscilla would end up going back to the Sherbrooke Street apartment. When they entered it, it was said to have looked now like a party had happened. However, on a coffee table, they would end up finding Luke's prescription glasses next to a Coors Light beer bottle that seemed to not really have been drank, as well as Luke's necklace. An officer was actually with the family when they discovered this, however, they declined to take any fingerprints. Luke's family would actually end up confronting his friends there and telling them, why didn't you give us these items when we were here before? You know, when they ended up finding his jacket, hoodie, and phone. But the friend ended up denying ever seeing these items, stating that they had not been there before. On March 15th, a pedestrian would end up contacting police claiming that they'd found Luke's bank card on the 500 block of Sherbrooke Street. On another occasion, while Priscilla and Monique were at the Sherbrooke Street home, they spoke to the upstairs neighbor who claimed they'd seen Luke with his friends the night of his disappearance. However, they didn't really have any, information to provide. However, a man across the street would end up informing the family that they should look at a different address, which was also located in a not-so-great area. But the family felt like they were being misled at this point, that they were kind of being steered away from looking at the Sherbrooke Street home. And when this house ended up being looked into, nothing was found there either. In another tip, an unknown witness would claim that they were actually woken up the night of Luke's disappearance, sometime after midnight due to an altercation outside of the house. They also claimed that there was a car running and there was loud music coming from the car. However, this witness didn't look outside, so that's kind of all the information that they could provide. On March 19th, police, along with a psychic and a scent dog, would search downtown North Bay's east side. The dog would end up leading police to Main Street and to Sherbrooke Street, but eventually would lead them to the Kinsman Trail, which stretched down the Chippewa Creek in the northeastern side of town. However, nothing ended up being found during the search either. An official search warrant for the Sherbrooke Street home wouldn't be obtained until 6 weeks after Luke's disappearance. Despite a forensic search of the home, if police found anything, they've never announced it. Now, eventually, a different take on the timeline would be revealed of what Luke did that night he disappeared. In this version of events, after Luke left Cecil's bar restaurant, he would be seen at a bar called Shooter's Bar, which is located at the Voyagers Inn Motel, which would have been about a 30-minute walk that cold winter's night. It's then stated that when he wanted to go back to his friend's place, he ended up taking a ride from one of the patrons at the bar. Now, despite all of this, there were actually a lot of tips that would flood in. However, a lot of these tips seemed to be not very credible. One woman would come forward and tell police that Luke had been beaten to death and dumped near Temiskaming, and they actually ended up providing police with very specific information of where his body would be. But family and friends just couldn't understand why someone would want to kill Luke. He didn't have any known enemies, he seemed to be a really nice guy. But police ended up looking into this lead. They actually searched waterways, they brought out specialized dive teams. And this went on for nearly 5 months. But eventually, this woman would end up telling police that she had lied about all of it, and she would end up being charged with misleading police, and I think she spent about 2 years in jail. Another woman would also come forward claiming her ex-boyfriend did something to Luke, and she also would eventually be charged with making false statements. But I think the real big question here is, where did Luke disappear from and when? Because as far as we know, the last sighting of Luke was on that surveillance footage. That's the last solid sighting of him leaving Cecil's bar restaurant. Then we have this newer information that he went to Shooter's Bar 30 minutes away, but then he got a drive home from a patron. So did he in fact go there? But the question is, what happened to him after that then? Because that would mean he was most likely brought back to the Sherbrooke Street home. And then, his jacket, his hoodie, his cell phone, his glasses, his necklace, all of that was in the home. And then his bank card ended up being found down the street. It doesn't make sense that Luke would have been out there walking the streets without his jacket on. It was March and it was very cold there. On top of that, what's so strange is that the friends went to that first nightclub, and when one of them was turned away, they ended up going across the street to the other bar. However, this time when a friend was turned away, Luke specifically, the rest of them went inside and left Luke outside alone. On top of that, Brent claimed he did message Luke that night and then in the morning. However, his mother claims that when she looked at his cell phone, there were no messages. So were there just messages from Brent but no one else? And that's what she finds odd, because that also still is odd if he's hanging out with all these people that are old friends to him. It's not like these are new people he just met. Why wouldn't they have called or phoned him to try to figure out where he was, especially if he didn't come back to the house later that night? Again, that's just so strange. Also, why didn't his friends report him missing when he didn't come back? They found all his belongings in their home, but didn't even bother to call his family or the police? What's also odd, if Luke did go to Shooter's Bar, who is this patron that drove him home? Do police know who that is? Could the patron have done something to him? But then again, it's just so strange to me that his jacket, his glasses, his phone, those are very personal belongings. Why would those be found in the home if he went out partying? You think he would have had those items on him, which would most likely mean to me that he went back home then. Or home to Sherbrooke Street, at least. It's just all so confusing. The answers wouldn't come, and months would turn to years. On the 5th anniversary of Luke's disappearance, the North Bay Police Services, along with the OPP, and the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services, announced that they were offering a reward for $50,000 leading to any information leading to Luke being found. But the years would keep passing. A private investigator would be brought in, and Luke's case would be featured on an episode of CTV W5 called What Happened to Luke Joly-Durocher that aired nationally in 2022, and you can also find it on YouTube. Other tips would also come in, claiming that Luke was wrapped in a blanket after he was murdered and put inside of the crawl space of the Sherbrooke Street home. In the episode with W5, Luke's family, along with reporters, ended up going into that crawl space and looking around. However, nothing seemed to be found. Luke's father, Rob Joly, sang, and I quote, "On the 13th anniversary of Luke's disappearance, we remained as committed to finding him as we have been since the very beginning. We just want to say thank you to those who have embraced our situation over the past 13 years, who take the time to share posters. Keeping the awareness out there is all we can do now. We love you all. Together, we will find Luke." End quote. That $50,000 reward still remains in place to this day. And from the looks of the Facebook page that the family has for Luke's disappearance, it seems to be more so that people believe Luke is no longer alive. But they are still searching for answers and still searching to find Luke's body if that's so, and who did this to him. So let's take one more good look at Luke. He's described as a white male standing 5 foot 8 inches tall, around 150 pounds, with dark, curly, short hair and brown eyes. He had a slender build, as well as braces on his upper teeth. As you can see here, there's pictures of the items he was wearing before he disappeared, including that jacket and that hoodie, as well as this purple studded belt. But over the years, there's been a lot of theories of what may have happened to Luke. And one theory, he might have drowned in Lake Nipissing, since it's only a 10-minute walk to the waterfront from Cecil's. But there's no evidence that he did possibly drown in the lake, other than it's a couple blocks from where he last was seen on the surveillance footage. However, the lake was said to have still been frozen because it was wintertime there. So it's not as if he could have just, tripped and fallen into the lake. He would have landed on the ice. There would have been, a disturbance in the ice, and there was a lot of people out there at that time ice fishing. So they would have, you'd think, noticed something out of character. Luke's father has a theory that Luke possibly owed someone money but had lost his bank card, so when he wasn't able to provide the money owed, he was kidnapped and murdered. Although there hasn't really been any talk of Luke being into drugs or anything like that, so what could he have owed money for? Especially in a town that he didn't even live in, where someone would be so upset with him over it that they'd want to kidnap and murder him. It seems like a pretty far length to go. Luke's case is just so strange because, as I said earlier, why didn't his friends follow him out of the bar? Why did he get kicked out of the second bar, but his friends didn't? And then why didn't they go with him? It also makes you wonder, why would he go 30 minutes across town to a whole different bar when there was other places in the area? Why wouldn't he just go back to the house then to wait for his friends? If he did even ever go to that other bar. It's just all so strange. And if he did go to that other bar, who gave him that ride home? If something didn't happen to him in the Sherbrooke home and he didn't disappear from the Sherbrooke home, why were all of his belongings found there? I think the fact that police didn't thoroughly search that home for 6 weeks, and then when they did, nothing has really been announced if anything was found, it makes me question how thoroughly it was even ever searched. And with so many people going in and out of that house over those 6 weeks, it seemed like it was a constant party house. What kind of evidence could really be collected at that point? But even over a decade later, the question still lies of what happened to Luke. Where is he? If you have any information on Luke's disappearance or whereabouts, I'll have the appropriate authorities to contact down below. If you know something, please say something. His family deserves answers. Luke deserves justice. Now, before we go, we're going to talk about today's small case, which is on 33-year-old Trevor Chaput. On July 6th of 2022, Trevor's family would contact the Sarnia police telling them that they hadn't heard from Trevor in weeks. Early August of 2022, police would end up spending 3 hours conducting a grid search of an area of Amjawinang First Nation south of Sarnia. Police did not indicate whether evidence was found or not, though. Despite this, no sign of Trevor has ever been found. Sarnia's deputy police chief, Julie Craddock, has said, and I quote, "The case weighs heavily on family, friends, and the community. Despite exhaustive efforts by police, there has been no trace of him since. Even the smallest detail could be crucial in resolving this case." End quote. From what I've seen on Trevor's Facebook, he may have 2 children, and those children deserve to know what happened to their father. His mother, Patty, saying, and I quote, "Today is 2 years I reported Trevor missing, and we have nothing. How can this be? Someone knows something, even if it's small, it could lead to his whereabouts. Please, his family needs this. Please help us find him and bring him home. I'm begging from the bottom of my heart. Just one little tip could help us. Please, let's bring Trevor home now. It's past due." End quote. Trevor is described as approximately 5 foot 6 inches tall and weighs approximately 160 pounds with a thin build. And honestly, that's all the information we have on Trevor's case. There seems to be really no information of what happened to him. There's really no information of when he was actually last seen, where he was last seen, what he may have been doing. All we know is that his family didn't hear from him for a few weeks, and then they reported him missing. If you have any information on Trevor's disappearance, please help this family out. I'll leave the contact information as well for his case below. Again, if you know something, please say something. But what do you guys think about these cases of missing men? Again, they very so often seem to be when young men are drinking and then they wander off from their friends, or their friends wander off from them, and then they just vanish. It's so weird. But unlike the Riley Strain case, after he wasn't allowed inside the bar or kicked out of the bar and his friends didn't follow him out, the body of water that was near where Luke went missing was frozen. So it just doesn't seem as likely to me that he may have fallen in the body of water like that. On top of that, why did the dogs track to that trail? A trail that seemed to be closer to Shooter's bar than anything. It's very strange to me. Luke was pretty much supposed to just be there for the night, to hang out with his friends, to celebrate, and then he was going back home. What trouble could he have gotten in that short period of time? Again, someone who didn't seem to really get into trouble as far as we know. This is a weird one. It really is. But what I want to know is if you have any other information on these cases that I didn't include in here, that I didn't find, and for the millionth time, if you do know something, please contact the authorities. My heart goes out to Luke and Trevor's families. I truly hope answers will come for you all. If you're going to go out drinking and partying, please stay with a group. Have a buddy system, because there's just one too many of these cases. And as always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video.